Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the marketplace. Coming up, President-elect John Mahama to push for renegotiation of IMF and World Bank programs.
We need to tweak them to meet the realities of today to do so. I believe we've had discussions with the World Bank and the IMF already, and we look to an early engagement.
Also coming up, IMF to review Ghana's classification as high debt distress country after 2028 despite significant progress made on restructuring payments due creditors. My name is Darryl Kwao. Thanks for joining us. Details coming up. Thanks for being here. First up, President-elect John Mahama has revealed that he will be pushing for early engagement with the IMF and World Bank over plans to renegotiate current programs with the country's development partners. He hinted that the discussions will be guided by proposals to reset the economy. The President-elect disclosed this during a meeting with the UN Resident Coordinator in Accra.
Looking at the existing programs, we need to tweak them to meet the realities of today to do so. I believe we've had discussions with the World Bank and the IMF already, and we look to an early engagement so that we can continue to be on the same wavelength. Of course, in the campaign, several, promises were made, and we need to look at what the reality is in terms of sitting together and seeing what the way forward is. Of course, one of our main concerns, and I think we've expressed it to you several times, is the issue of the humps in the debt repayments, and it's something we need to see how we can smooth in so that we don't default again. That would be more catastrophic than this current default.
While Ghana is still classified as a high debt distress country, this tag could be removed after 2028. This is despite the significant progress by government in restructuring its debts owed creditors. Here's George Affe.
This revelation was captured in the latest report issued by the IMF about Ghana's performance under the fund program. It was this report that was submitted to the IMF board that led to some $360 million released to Ghana after it passed the test review earlier this year. It was the expectation that this classification will be removed very soon, as government had announced that it was about 90% through when it comes to restructuring the debt owed both the domestic and the external creditors. But the IMF, in the report on Ghana, argues that the country still has this tag due to the near-term breach of the debt sustainability analysis threshold. However, the fund has revealed that Ghana will reach that moderate risk of debt distress by 2028, when at that time all those targets set by the fund has been met when it comes to restructuring its debt. It is not clear for now how this classification would impact on the country's finances going forward and the cost of any fresh borrowings.
Well, joining me to discuss this is Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University, Williams Repra. Good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us. Let's start off with the lead story this afternoon, which is that the President-elect plans to renegotiate the IMF and World Bank programs. I've heard many analysts say a renegotiation is not needed. Your stance on this?
Well, and good morning to your viewers. If you remember, Ghana, we went to IMF, and I quote from the words of Professor Bobkin, straight on a stretcher to the ICU point, which is IMF place. We were not ready, and the government delayed in going to IMF. So most of the programs that we did were in a hurry. What the incoming president is talking about, to me, to reset the economy, and looking at what he has proposed to come out with our own economic dialogue, to be able to come out with a program that gets the buy-in of all Ghanaians, is something that will help us to reset the economy. What the current government did, the NPP government has done with the IMF program, they prepared it on their own and then imposed it on Ghanaians. But I think that if we have this government to get all of us to sit down within the 120 days he has promised, I'm sure we'll be able to come out with programs that will get the buy-in of all Ghanaians, professionals, and people from any other world, to contribute to the the strategy change for Ghana. And we know that IMF is also aware that this government comes with their own ideology and promises. This must be aligned, and it may change the 5 pillars proposed in the current IMF program. So anyone who really understands governance and the way politics is, the new government comes in with a new idea. We know that when NPP came into power in 2016, they did a similar thing, renegotiated with IMF. The program length was extended, and I'm expecting the same thing to happen, that our current program will be extended by a period of additional 2 years to make it 5 years. This will be in line with what the IMF planned, that by that time, our high debt strategy, high tax will be removed.
Well, top of your mind, what aspects could be renegotiated? What difference would it make?
So, top of my mind, you notice that this government is coming out with some tax policies that may have to affect the current tax strategy of the fund. You know, the fund is saying that we should increase our tax rates. This current government campaign on cancellation of some taxes. I know that what the current government, the incoming government will be doing is be broadening the tax net, and they're also going to reduce or cancel some taxes. So this must be aligned in that policy. A major one is expenditure reduction. That I am expecting that this government is going to propose that give us the room to reduce our expenditure. He's going to cut the ministers from 120 to 60, which is going to have a major tax expenditure savings. On the issue of how he's going to realign some of the ministries, which may lead to some job losses, and they may have to create room for that. And then also on their policy of 24-hour economy, it must find its way into the IMF program, and so that it may be able to get support from bilateral, multilateral donors to make sure that this policy works. Indeed, if the 24-hour economy really becomes successful, it's going to propel production, and it's going to impact, as from their policy, they talked about exports. It's going to lead to export, which is going to bring in more foreign inflows and going to strengthen our currency. So these are some of the strategies that must find its way into the IMF document. So this is the reason why a renegotiation is more needed at this time.
Well, also this afternoon, we have been reporting the IMF's assessment of our debt situation, essentially saying that we are going to be classified or keep the tag of a high debt distress country till 2028. Hopefully, then there will be a review. I'm just wondering what this says about our debt repayment efforts.
So if you take a look at their document and what they are saying, it means that the IMF program we are on will not help us to get out of this tap. 2028, which is not in line with what the programs gives us. The implication for us is that from now to 2028, investors will see Ghana that we are still struggling with, we have currency risks, our inflation rates are still high, which means that our loan repayment is going to be not be regular. The way to turn this around, to be able to get out of this, as I mentioned, is expand our tax collection base, rather not to increase the tax rate. Be able to find strategies to bring more people in paying the taxes. And then one that is improved, and we're able to also get some companies expanding their production, this is going to bring in more revenue. Another impact is that I'm sure international investors are looking at Ghana because of this successful change of government and saying that, well, this is a country with high debts, but in terms of their governance system, they're a country that has some of stability. So investors will be saying, we can manage and then go there and be able to turn things around. One major area for me, which will be the game changer, is our extractive industry. If the government is able to come up with strategies to harness the benefits of our extractive industry, it's going to lead to a major positive impact. And we notice President Kufuor had that opportunity when they discovered oil. President Mills had that opportunity when they also find some additional oil flows. And all these had a positive impact. So if our current government, the incoming government, really wants to go on the line of turning the economy around, they must pay attention to our extractive industry. That is where we'll be able to get the capital injection, bringing in the inflows, and this will lead to a turnaround strategy for our country.
Right. Yesterday, we got a read of the third quarter GDP estimates, the economy expanding by 7.2% in the third quarter of this year. Although the figures look good on the surface, I'm in concerns that we are not seeing growth in the real sectors of the economy, which would affect the livelihoods of people. Your thoughts? So,
from the data from the Ghana Statistical Service, the two main line items that led the growth. The first one is, as I've mentioned, the extractive industry. Our gold and oil industry really propelled. However, these are capital-intensive industries, and they don't create jobs. The jobs created in those areas are very limited. The second area was the service sector, but the service sector only focused, the growth was only found within the urban areas. It did not affect the rural areas. So if we really want to have a growth that leads to an impact in creating jobs, then the structural economic must change. We have all been talking about the agricultural sector. So if the incoming government with their 24-hour economic program, if they are going to focus on the agricultural sector, it may lead to having an impact in the rural areas. Then we will see that anytime we have growth in GDP, there is also growth in employment, job employment creating opportunities in the economy. So these are the areas that we must really pay attention to. A major concern is that we have growth, but there is high inflation. And this high inflation is prepared, going back again, our food inflation is very high. So if you're able to go back to the agricultural sector, be able to turn it around, we believe that the food inflation will come down. And then the last part is that if you're able to also improve our exports, which will have a major impact. So the export, both the traditional and non-traditional export must improve. And this can be done when we have the economy being turned around. And I'm sure that within a period of 5 years, we may have this structural and change in our economy. And that is what, if you ask me, with the IMF renegotiation and everything, we must extend it by additional 2 years and then have this period of 5 years to reset the country onto the path that will help the country to grow.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Williams Pepa. Thank you so much for joining us from the U.S. Andrews University. associate professor of finance there. As he's been saying, the economy is really a hot topic right now, and expectations are higher as to what the incoming government will do to fix the economic situation. Ahead, we are going to have an analysis of the promises made by President-elect John Mahama and the hurdles ahead as he assumes office in January. Stay with us here on The Marketplace. All right, welcome back to The Marketplace. Time for business and politics. Well, President-elect John Mahama has officially begun his journey to assuming office. Yesterday, he visited the seat of government, the Jubilee House, and there was the inauguration of the Joint Transitional Team. That was held later in the day. And on Tuesday, he announced a 10-member transition team tasked with overseeing the smooth transfer of power from the outgoing administration. Well, expectations are high, seeing that the economy was a major issue for voters in last weekend's poll. So what has John Mahama promised and what hurdles are ahead? Lead data analyst here joins Isaac Ofeji joins me in studio. Good afternoon to you. First of all, your reflections on the weekend's polls. I mean, we talked a lot about the economy, talked about the middle class, them sitting out of the elections.
Yeah.
Looks like that happened pretty much, and it cost the MPP.
Yeah, in fact, if you do the math, you will see that about 40% of the registered voters indirectly boycotted this year's election, if you look at the turnout. But the most important thing is that analysis we did here on business and politics, saying that, look, the economy is one of the most important issues going into this year's election, where we looked at the monetary policy rate and how it predicts elections. If you go back to watch that video, you will see that we said that the higher the peak, the higher the margin of win or defeat, and it's exactly the same thing that happened in this year's election. But all is said and done, President Mahama is president-elect, and we have to look at his, policies or promises on the economy. And definitely, you could read from his body language when he was declared the winner by the Electoral Commission that he knew that there is a big task ahead, and number one was the economy, Darryl.
Right. I mean, top of my mind, 24-hour economy, that's what he campaigned on. But right now, he's talking about renegotiating the IMF and World Bank programs, aspects of it. I mean, he's talked about what are creating jobs. So many promises made.
So many.
Where do we start from?
Well, so we start from these two figures on the smart wall. And the most important thing to note is that the 24-hour economy is more or less like the bigger umbrella under which almost all the other economic policies under John Dramani Mahama will operate. He made 112 promises going into this year's election compared to Dr. Baumia's.
Well, I thought that was big till I saw the 186
promises.
112 promises.
112. So sitting there when he was declared, he knew that he, had 112, promises that he had made on the economy, and Ghanaians had voted for him. Possibly, or not possibly, I mean, mainly because of the current economic hardship that the country is facing. Let's look at some of the promises he made to the people of Ghana. And, I mean, this side will not be analyzed because it's almost immaterial at the moment. Now, the green side is where our attention will be put, because he is promising, John Dramani Mahama promised that, look, I'm going to take away the e-levy, the COVID-19 levy, the betting tax, and then also the emissions levy. So what we did was that this is a promise that a lot of Ghanaians will love and resonate with. And they will say, if you take away this, we will vote for you. But let's look at the economic burden ahead if he decides to do this. If he decides to do this, you can see we're currently under an IMF program, and the most important thing is revenue, mobilization. So definitely, if you are taking away these three components or tax handles, the key question is,
how do you make up?
Was the alternative? Absolutely, because the COVID-19 levy alone, I mean, if you look at the period that we are looking at, that could give, it takes away this, that's about 13.91 billion Ghana cedis under this, I think from 2025 till he's done with his tenure. He could be getting about 91 billion Ghana cedis from the COVID-19 levy. He's forgoing this. And in economics, when the next best alternative for going, what is the opportunity cost when we let go of this almost 14 billion Ghana cedis? E-levy, for instance, definitely not really performing in terms of the expected revenues. But if he decides to scrap e-levy, he's forgoing close to 8.3 billion Ghana cedis. And then the betting tax, or the 10% withholding tax on all games of chance, that if you do the math, that's also about 5.1 billion.
Well, he's talked a lot about expenditure cuts, but how much can you cut to make up for all these funds?
He says if you look at his 120 days social pact with the people of Ghana, he's going to operate the leanest government. I think about 60 ministers or so, I'm not so sure. But definitely that will also be a key component when you're trying to do the cut. Another important, aspect of the economy definitely is how the cedi will fare under the president-elect. I mean, he says he's going to stabilize the cedi to curb the inflationary pressures. We've seen how inflation stubbornly refused to, go down in November. How is President Mahama going to look at this curve and bring this down? This is a curve. This is where he left the country. He left the country with somewhere around $1 to 4 cedis. He's coming back with $1 still trading around 16 cedis or 15 cedis, 80 pesos. He has promised to stabilize this and bring inflation down. He's currently looking at this curve and say, whoa, this is a big mountain that I need to bring.
The disparity.
Absolutely, where he left versus what he is inheriting. And there's also another argument about, the debt situation currently. What is he going to do? I mean, if you look at the debt currently, it's about 761 billion, Ghana cedis. It's the reason why we had to restructure the debt, because of the unsustainable level where, if you look at our ability to pay the debt, is key. And he's saying he's going to renegotiate the IMF deal, but definitely if you are renegotiating IMF deal...
You've got 30 seconds.
Yeah, you have to look at Eurobonds. And I'll end on Eurobonds. John Dramani Mahama's biggest header will be, servicing his external debt. And Eurobonds will come, starting from 2025, he'll start paying about 1.3 billion in 2026, somewhere around almost $500 million in almost $1 billion in 2025, 1.3 billion in 2026. And if you look at between that time till he ends, it's always around 1 billion. The average is $950 million in terms of Eurobond payments. We've not added bilaterals, we've not added multilateral, we've not added even, debt servicing obligation in the domestic system. So big head ahead.
Revisit this subsequently.
Absolutely.
Plenty more to digest. Thank you so much, Isaac Ofieje, there with a look at John Mahama's promises as he assumes office in January. That is the marketplace. More news on our website, myjournline.com/business. Thanks for watching. We will be back same time tomorrow.